First thing I'm going to say is, for the love of God, don't take anything I say as gospel or the truth. I'm not a mechanic. I'm not an expert on this stuff. These are just some of the experiences I've had and some of the things I've dealt with in owning a 72-year-old airplane now. So we're going to talk about this fabulous document, maintenance aspects of owning your own aircraft. All right. So this is an FAA doc, and you can download this. And I've got it on my laptop right here, and I've also got it so I can email it. So if anybody wants it, you got a thumb drive with you or anything, you want me to transfer it over to you, I can do that. Or give me an email address and I'll send it to you. I'll save you having to search for it and everything. But we've all been in a position where we needed a mechanic and there wasn't one around. Either at your own airport or you're flying somewhere and something happens. That's happened to me several times. But the closest mechanic to me is at an FBO at an airport about a 45-minute drive away. The airport I'm at, well, I take that back. I just thought of this. Take that back. The guy in the hangar next to me, he is an A&P, but he's also the state's attorney for the county. So he's got some more pressing things than worrying about my airplane. So the next closest is Jack back there, and he's about an hour drive away from me. And he not only works on airplanes at his airport, he also teaches at a school and has about 50 other balls in the air. So it's gotten to a point where with my stuff that I have had to learn a few things. And my dad was a machinist at Gardner Denver Compressor Company for years and years and years. He was a wonderful mechanic, had a 7th grade education, but he could do anything mechanical. I never really picked that up from him. I dealt more with electronics and things like that and stuff, and video production and everything. But I have had to, in the course of owning this aircraft, learn how to do some things on my own, and I've gotten to where I can do them. I know righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and all that sort of thing. So, and with Jack's help back there also, I helped with the overhaul on my engine this last winter, and it was an eye-opening experience. I'd never been that deep inside of an engine and see how all that stuff is put together and how it works and everything. But so this document here, it details what those of us who are not mechanics and not licensed mechanics, I should say, can do with our aircraft. And one thing I'm going to say right off the bat, there we go. It's just like an FAA document, introduction, how to begin, examples of preventive maintenance. One of the first things in here, you should conduct a self-analysis as to whether you have the ability to perform the work satisfactorily and safely. And that's what I've dealt with. Every time I touch something, if I don't know for absolute positive 100, 200% sure, I'm sending a picture to that guy back there. Did I do this right? And usually it's, no, you need to change this or do this or whatever and stuff. So, but this is a nice little document that you can look through, and it'll tell you a lot of great information about how and what you can and can't do. What it comes down to is if it's structural or complex assembly or disassembly, they don't want you touching that, because then you're getting into internal engine components that, you know, we can all take it apart, but putting it back together right is going to be the trick. Okay, so I won't read every single thing in here, but I'm going to go through a couple of things. First thing, you need to understand that authorized preventative maintenance cannot involve complex assembly operations. So we're talking about internal engine components, I'm assuming there. There's a list of things that the owner pilot can perform. You need to make a logbook entry. And again, here we go. If I'm going to do some little tightening a screw or something like that, you know, who cares? I'm going to do what I need to make this thing right. Examples of preventative maintenance would be repairing tires, or remove, install, repair landing gear tires, service bearings, gear shock struts, replace defective safety wire, cotter keys, lubricating, things like that. Basic, replacing bulbs, clean spark plugs, gap spark plugs, things like that, basic stuff. A good point that I've had brought up to me several times, as far as, for instance, spark plugs. We all know that there has to be a certain torque value to those spark plugs when they get put back on. If too much, you're going to twist something loose and you're going to bust your engine. So you get a torque wrench and you set it correctly and you do it. How do you know that torque wrench is set correctly? Well, you have to go and get it calibrated and make sure that it's correct. It's going to be fairly close. I mean, if you've got a $500 snap-on torque wrench, it's probably okay. And there's a good chance that your $29.95 Harbor Freight torque wrench is okay, but how do you know? And you're dealing with something that's as old as it is and as valuable as it is to all of us and stuff. So why mess around? If I can go get that torque wrench calibrated, make sure that it is correct. Some of the other things in here, let's see. It says go ahead and set up some checklists. Go through and check your propeller for cracks, look for leaks, engine checks, all the standard things that we do when we get ready to fly. Check your engine cowlings, engine oil quantity and condition. That's all, again, all the basic things we do when we're getting ready to fly. Let's see what else we got here. Interior stuff. A nice little piece of information here in the summary. It pays to take good care of your engine. Good maintenance is not cheap, but poor performance can be disastrously expensive. So the history on my plane, I bought it off eBay. Some of you folks have heard this story before. I bought it off eBay. I was looking for a plane to buy at the time and was driving back from Alabama from looking at a Starduster. And I got there and a gentleman that owned it opened the hangar door, and the first thing I saw was 3 propellers hanging on the wall with curled up tips. Okay, so I politely looked it over and spent my time with him and stuff. And I said, okay, thanks a lot. I'll get in touch with you. I contacted him a few weeks later, made him an offer, and the offer was very low, and he about came through the phone at me and everything. Okay, thanks a lot. See you later. While I was driving back from Alabama, a buddy of mine called me up and said, hey, you always liked Stinsons, didn't you? I'm like, yeah. There used to be one sitting at the airport where I first got my private pilot license at. He said, well, there's a couple of them on eBay right now. Go look at them. So I looked, and the one out here was the nicer of the two. I put a very low bid on it just to get my place in line there, and ended up with about 30 seconds left on the auction. I bumped the bid up pretty good, and it didn't hit the reserve price, but I did win the auction. So I got a hold of the people and I said, okay, here's what I bid, what do you think? And they said, yeah, it's close enough, sure. Crap, I just bought an airplane. So, yeah, exactly, yeah. Put the down payment with them and everything. It was in West Helena, Arkansas. I'm from West Central Illinois, so it was about a 2.5 hour flight down in a friend of ours, Bonanza. And went down there and walked in. I had a check in my pocket, didn't know for sure if I was going to actually sign the check or not. Looked it all over, looked through the whole thing. It looked really nice, and we spun the prop through, and then, I did the unthinkable. I did it without a pre-buy. I bought it without a pre-buy. But it went ahead and it worked out okay for the most part. We flew it back, had no problems flying it back. I flew it for a full year. When it came time for an annual, the mechanic I went to at that time, he called me up a few days later and said, you got some low compression. I said, oh, okay, well, what cylinder? He said, all of them. I said, well, how low? I said, well, between 20 and 40 on every cylinder. Okay, well, how do we proceed? Well, you need to get a top end overhaul done. We'd had that done. Came back, flew it for a better part of a year. Had a one cylinder fail on me on the way into Oshkosh, and engine kept running. It took me about 10 minutes to get to Dodge County Airport, but I got there. And took about 3 months to get that cylinder rebuilt and shipped back in and everything. Luckily, the folks there at Dodge County were experienced with Franklin, so we had a good situation with that. Since then, we've had several more cylinders get replaced as well. Several other things. And to go back a little bit here, the mechanic that I first dealt with, I really can't stress enough. Find yourself a person that is a mechanic that you can work with and will share the information with you. The first guy, we've all walked into the mechanic shop and seen the sign on the wall that says, shop rate $50, $75 if you ask questions, $100 if you help. Well, this guy literally was like that. Took the plane in. It was a small grass strip. I dropped it off. Said, we're going to have the annual done. I want this, this, this. Would you mind if I came and hung out while you were doing this? Okay. When are you going to plan on start working on it? Next week. Okay. Well, what day? I don't know. Finally got it out of him. I finally came back up and hung out for a day, and it literally was like that. Ask him a question. Yes. No. He would have been very happy if I'd have left the plane and he'd have called me a month later or whenever it was and said, okay, it's done. Come and give him a check and walk away. He didn't want anything to do with an owner being there. So I didn't learn a whole lot out of that when I got a little bit of information out of it. The next mechanic I went to was a gentleman at another airport in Monroe City, Missouri. He's a truck driver and also had an AMPIA. And he was almost the opposite of that. I walked in and I called him up and said, hey, can you do an annual for me? Yeah, sure. I went to the day before. I said, okay, well, I'll be down there at about 9 o'clock in the morning, drop it off. My wife will come pick me up, and you call me whenever it's ready to go. And he said, well, you can leave it if you want to, but it's only going to take me about 3 or 4 hours to do this annual. Okay, so we went down there. He opened everything up, greased some cables, pulled a plug out, put his thumb on top. That's about 75. Did that with all the plugs. He checked every cylinder, but that's about 73, I think. Yeah. Said, okay, you're good to go. See you. Signed it off and I left.
Calibrated thumb.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. Nice guy and everything, and he was willing to let me help and see what was going on and stuff, but didn't have much confidence in the work. Eventually, I got a hold of Jack, and Jack's been really good about helping me and showing me how certain things work and sharing the information and answering any questions I can ask him. It's been really great and everything. We've also had with my plane carburetor rebuilt, both mags refurbished. We found 2 different types of valve springs in it, and both were wrong, but the wrong kinds of valve springs. And if I'm sure I'll get this number wrong, but
you're using all my material.
When there's a value somewhere in the books that says when you compress the valve spring when it's installed, it's supposed to be, I think, 50 pounds of compression, and these were compressing between 5 and 10 pounds. So we had problems there. Anyway, it's running great right now. I'm going to do this every time I say that. I do this. We just had a full overhaul done last winter, and it's running great now. But find yourself a mechanic, for the love of God, find yourself a mechanic that'll share information with you and won't just be a grumpy old. So one of the things that I like to stress when I do little talks like this, I talk to some vocational technical kids once a year as they're getting ready for a move out into the world and do a job hunt and everything. And I do video production for a living, and they always are interested in learning about that kind of stuff. And one of the things I always stress to them is learn every single thing you can. Right now, I live on about an 18-acre farm out in the middle of nowhere near Camp Point, Illinois. I lived in Quincy, which is the big city, all my life, and moved out there about, 12 years ago now. And since moving out there, we're far enough away from everything, I've had to learn how to do this or this or this or this. And I started telling these kids, learn everything you can. Every little piece of information helps. And I'm working on my CFI right now, and so I had to get into the psychology of learning. And there's 4 levels of learning. There's rote, understanding, application, and correlation. Rote is memorizing things. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You just know some numbers. Understanding, you understand the information. Application, you can put it to work. Correlation is when you can take multiple pieces of information and put it all together and make a new piece of information. And that's the kind of thing I always stress to these kids, and I stress to everybody here as well. When I do these talks, I have a little PowerPoint. I won't run it today because it's geared toward that age group. But I start saying I've had to learn all these things, and I've had to make new pieces of information and figure out how to do things. Every little bit, doesn't matter what it is. Exactly what I tell them is I say, if you can have some new piece of information put in your head or some new kind of experience, as long as it's legal, do it. And I always put that in because of the age group, okay? Then I start flashing some stuff up on the screen. I say, did you know there's not just one kind of bolt? There's grade 3, there's grade 5, there's grade 8, there's AN bolts, and I talk a little bit about what each one does. AN bolts are have the best ductility, I believe is the word. It'll bend the most, it's very strong, but it'll bend a little bit before it breaks. So that's for aerospace things. I go in and I talk about Ohm's Law a little bit. I originally went to school to be an electrician. I was going to be one of those guys that worked on the high voltage stuff on the substations and things like that, or in a big factory with bigger equipment that was running 480 and stuff. I also, for a period of time, for about 10 years during the mid-'80s, I used to work with a lot of rock bands, local bands, and I also went out on tour with a lot of bigger bands and everything. I worked for Kiss and Guns N' Roses and Cheap Trick and all kinds of bands like that. When I would go into a nightclub somewhere with a smaller band, I'd go in and I'd check and I'd say, okay, that plug over there, where does that go? Okay, that's got a 30 amp breaker on it. I can do the math and I can figure it's 110 volts and it's 30 amps. That means I got this many watts to work with, and I've got 300 watt light cans. I can put up X number of light cans, and that'll be the best possible show I can do that night in that nightclub with my light show. So again, we're working for the best possible thing we can do. Then I do the little joke bit. I talk about opera. And I say, I totally appreciate the quality and the expertise and the ability of these people that sing opera, but God, I don't like it. I mean, to do what they do, and I do a lot of voice work around for real estate shows all around the country. I do monthly, I do 400 to 500 different real estate listings for different companies around the country. So actually did some last night up in the room. What they can do with their voices is just astounding. I don't like it, but I know something about it because I learned something by watching Bugs Bunny.
Can you give us an example?
If I fired up my PowerPoint, I could, yeah. But what I do is I have from The Rabbit of Seville, and I show that little clip and I sing along with it, and I know those lyrics. It's let me cut your mop, let me shave your crop, daintily, daintily, hey you. And so we get a good laugh out of that and stuff. Then I go on and do a few other things. Once every 3 months for the last 12 years, I've recorded a corporate meeting for Blessing Hospital in Quincy. It's the largest employer in our area. And all the top managers get together for a 2-day meeting, and I record it and I run sound for it. And on the morning, mid-morning and mid-afternoon, they have a little 20-minute break. Get up and stretch and use the bathroom or whatever. But before that, they always have a little 5-minute fun activity, they call it. And so what I do is I was sitting back and just watching everything like that. Well, this time they had a trivia contest. And the theme of the whole presentation that time was science fiction, or outer space and everything. So they started asking questions about what's this, can anybody name all the planets? And nobody could. I finally, at the back of the room, not being an employee of the hospital, I can. Oh, Randy knows them. And I said, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And Pluto's, Oh, okay, well, here's your treat. You want a candy bar or something. And they went on and kept asking more questions, and it got to where nobody knew the answers. And what do you call a rock that falls from space and hits the ground? Asteroid? No. Meteor? No. I said, it's a meteorite. When it hits the ground, it becomes a meteorite. Oh, Randy wins again. Finally, the last question was, what is Captain James T. Kirk's Middle name. Nobody knew. Everybody guessed and kept guessing and guessing. And the prize, they said, Randy, you can't win this one because it was a $50 credit to the cafeteria at the hospital for an employee. And nobody guessed. Randy, I said, Tiberius. I said, he's right. I said, yeah, and he had a brother named Sam, brother named Sam, who died on Altair 6 when the parasites invaded the planet, and it was Shatner with a mustache is what it was. They showed a picture of him. And he had his father's name was George, and his Captain Kirk's serial number is SC9370176CEC. And everybody just did what you just did. And I said, well, go ahead, look it up. So yeah, he's right, that's it. What is it again? SC9370176CEC. That's it. Standing ovation. When everybody got done, the CEO of the hospital walked back to my desk. I'm all the way in the back, kind of like I am back there. Walked all the way back, reached in her pocket, peeled off $50 and slapped it down on my table. So I won $50 by just knowing Captain Kirk's serial number. Just had that stuck in my head all those years. So the point is, every little piece of information helps. Anytime you can learn something about your airplane, anytime you can learn something about maintenance, even if you're not planning on doing any maintenance on it, you're going to get stuck somewhere, and if you know how to do this little thing, it's going to help you. It's always good, every piece of information you can stick in your head. So, that's it. All right.